Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another tropical outlook and forecast. And boy, have things dramatically changed since my last upload yesterday evening. We now have Hurricane Elsa as Elsa rapidly intensified overnight and is now sitting at 75 miles an hour before lesser until the landfall. It already hit portions of Barbados, and now we have hurricane warnings, hurricane watches, tropical storm watches, and tropical storm warnings all spread out across the Caribbean, with hurricane warnings for portions of the Lesser Antilles, as this thing is just hours away from landfall. So this thing is that a hurricane, so this is going to completely change the potential strain as it goes toward eventually Cuba and the Greater Antilles, and then of course later on Florida and the United States. So we have a lot to talk about. We have new models, we have new strength, obviously, we have new cones, so it's exactly what I'm going to be talking about in this video. Again, I'm not going to be as active within the next few days because I have a lot of plans, but I'll try my best to get as many uploads as I can as possible. But without further ado, let's get to the tropical forecast. So here, look now at the 8 a.m. Eastern update, and this thing is at 75 miles an hour. I believe at the 5 a.m. update, it was at 60 miles an hour. So this thing went up 15 miles an hour in the past update. So this is absolutely just crazy. I don't think anybody thought this will become a hurricane or rapidly intensify to a hurricane before the Lesser Antilles. I knew this would be a hurricane at some point near Cuba or the Greater Antilles, but I would have never thought this would become a hurricane like that before Lesser Antilles, especially considering the speed it's moving at. So sitting at 75 miles an hour at this point, still moving west-northwest at 28 miles an hour. So this thing is moving very rapidly to the west-northwest, but somehow it found a way to rapidly intensify 35 miles an hour within the past 24 hours. Because again, I believe this became a tropical storm yesterday in the morning, and now it's a hurricane. So this thing rapidly intensified 35 miles an hour in the past 24 hours. Pressure's down at 995 millibars, so I believe it dropped around 8 millibars since last time I checked at the, because obviously I went to sleep pretty early yesterday, so it was like 1,003 at the 11 o'clock update, and now it's 985, so this thing is getting its act together, really watching after the Lesser Antilles, and then going to be watching out for areas like Hispaniola, Jamaica, and Cuba, and Florida within the next few days. So this thing's definitely going to be a pretty big threat for the Lesser Antilles. I already have hurricane warnings there. And it's going to be exciting to see what we have for the 11 a.m. update, see if it gets any stronger, or if it stays the same, or just to see an update on what happens by 11 o'clock. Here's like now at the latest IR forecast. Again, it did just make landfall in Barbados, so Barbados basically was right in the middle of this track, so they got hit dead on by this hurricane. So Barbados definitely got hit unexpectedly by a pretty strong system. They were forecast to get hit by a 60 mile an hour system, which is still pretty significant, but they got hit by a 15 mile an hour stronger storm, so they got hit by a 75 mile an hour storm instead of 60 mile an hour. So 50 miles an hour doesn't sound like a big difference, but considering how much stronger the gusts will be with 75 miles an hour other than 60 miles an hour, is definitely a big impact. So this thing has a really nice low pressure sitting right there. You got that nice banding stretching across. Again, yesterday this thing did not have any western quadrant whatsoever, and now it has a beautiful, large banding western quadrant, and it's going to be wrapping around in the counterclockwise form. So this thing has the banding, this thing has the formation for sure for hurricanes. Let's go ahead and look now at the, let's see here if we can get a look at the visible, because visible obviously is going to give us a lot more detail other than convection. Look at this thing. This thing is just absolutely crazy looking. I mean, this thing looked nothing like this yesterday. There's that low pressure heading for the Lesser Antilles, and then you just see that banding stretching out. You see those little cloud tops. You see the banding stretching out that way, and then you have the banding going this way. Obviously, it's going kind of clockwise, so it's not really going this way, but it's the structure of the system. And this is a very, very beautiful structure of this system. This somehow decided to become a hurricane, and it rapidly intensified. It did not rapidly intensify overnight, but compared to the past 24 hours, it did. It did go up 35 miles an hour. But look at this banding, stretching. This thing had no western quadrant yesterday. None, which is hard to believe. I mean, people are worried about shear and dry air getting into it. But look at this now. A Category 1 hurricane before the lesser Antilles. I mean, obviously, you see the counterclockwise flow and vorticity surrounding that low pressure. There you see that area of low. We have those higher cloud tops and that colder area of convection. That kind of hot spot is where that low is basically. And we have a ton of lightning. So this is obviously strong thunderstorms without a doubt. So this thing looks amazing. We will see how it looks later on today. And I'm definitely interested to see how it looks within the next 24 hours. So here's looking now at the Conan forecast. So there we have those hurricane warnings for portions of the lesser Antilles. There we have the hurricane force winds right there. But also we have a hurricane warning now for Barbados as well. So it's expected to be a hurricane all the way up to the point till Saturday afternoon. And I do disagree with that. I think this will continue to be a hurricane by the time it gets towards Cuba, because I do expect it to be over 80 miles. I do expect it to get up to 80 miles an hour at some point. And then we have these tropical storm watches going all the way up to the U.S. Virgin Islands, as well as tropical storm warnings, and as well now Hispaniola all the way to the Dominican coast and northern Haiti coast are now under tropical storm warnings. And then for areas of Haiti and southern Dominican Republic are under hurricane watches. So this thing has shifted a little bit towards the north track-wise. It's going to be taking a little bit more of a sharp west-northwest turn. So Jamaica looks like they're not going to get a landfall. And it looks like maybe southern Haiti may just get skinned. It may just skin the coast and not make an actual landfall. Maybe like Arthur did with the Outer Banks. But I think just maybe skin the coast. Obviously, we can't rule out a possibility of a Haitian landfall. It's so darn close. And that's why we already have hurricane watches, and those warnings did stretch all the way up to the northern Haiti coast. And we already now have tropical storm watches all the way up to Jamaica. So look at the Caribbean. The Caribbean is just absolutely full of watches and warnings. This is not something you typically see in the first day of July. This is just not something you see at all on the first day of July. But somehow we're seeing it. I mean, we're seeing it, and there I am deep in that cone. But as you do see, it looks like it's going to be sparing Jamaica, at least based on this trend. Obviously, there's a southern trend yesterday towards Jamaica, but obviously it looks like it has trended northward a little bit due to this thing rapidly gaining strength. So we're looking at for a Haitian landfall possible, and as well as like going dead on for central Cuba. And if it does go dead on in central Cuba like this instead of Havana, there's a better chance it could hit the Keys of Florida. Because obviously, if it's not going like this anymore, like yesterday it was kind of trending this way, it's going to obviously be a lot further from the Keys. But now that it's like this, the Key West and the Keys of Florida may actually get hit a lot more. They may not get a direct landfall, but they can get a lot more effects, meaning areas like Naples, Miami, Homestead, Lake Okeechobee, those areas are going to get hit hard as well. And then the National Hurricane Center has this landfall right on Tampa. I mean, the National Hurricane Center has this landfall directly on Tampa Bay. So this thing is going to be a big threat for a lot of people. So there it is at 75 miles an hour. I'm my screen a little bit so you guys can kind of see. There it is at 75 miles an hour. Just hit Barbados, now heading for the Lesser Antilles. 75 miles an hour tomorrow. Today. 75 miles an hour later on. And then weakening to 70 because of it could be weakening to 70 because of land traction with Haiti. That's definitely possible. But then I do expect it to become a hurricane once again before Cuba because of its slowing down in the really warm ocean heat content SSTs over there. So I do believe this has the chance to become a hurricane again once it weakens because of either Haiti landfall or Haiti land interaction. And then it's going to be going into the Tampa Bay region at 65 miles an hour, which is obviously 5 miles an hour stronger than yesterday. So we are going to continue to watch out for a high-end tropical storm for portions of Cuba, Florida, and even up to Georgia for some portions. So just going to keep a very close eye on this cone. So now let's go look at the actual watches and warnings. So Barbados and portions of the Lesser Antilles are under hurricane warnings. Dominica and Antigua, you guys, are in those tropical storm watches. Then we have a small little warning right there. And those almost all the Lesser Antilles are under some type of advisory, warning, or watch. And then we have those tropical storm warnings all across the Hispaniola coast with the southern Haitian portion obviously under that hurricane watch, as they're going to be maybe getting skinned by this. I would not doubt if they get issued under a hurricane warning, if it's still a hurricane by the time it gets towards the coast. So if it's maybe 75 or 80 miles an hour right here, we are going to be seeing hurricane warnings again for Haiti especially as that northern trend continues. And then obviously now tropical storm watch is all across portions of Jamaica. So we have just a lot of new updates, and it's just a lot. Let's go look at the surface wind of Hurricane Elsa. So obviously the thing now has a small little dot of hurricane force winds. But right now, those hurricane force winds are legit right over Barbados as we speak at this point. So it's kind of hard to see that brown color, which is the same. It's the same wind because it is directly under that hurricane warning. So we can't really get a good look at that. But just know this wind field, tropical storm wind field, has dramatically just been overwhelmed. So now the northwest quadrant of this system is as well very, very, I guess, involved, and we just need to wait for that southwestern quadrant. Once that southwestern quadrant gets a lot larger of a wind field, this thing's going to bring in big effects for Jamaica and Haiti at the exact same time. But if it stays the way it is, Haiti and even Hispaniola may get hit quite significantly, especially if you're on the coast, and then Jamaica may just miss out a lot, maybe some gusts of tropical storm. But again, the southern quadrant below that low pressure does not have much compared to the northern and eastern quadrants. So let's go look now at the latest microwave, and as you can see, we have a recent big blow up. And actually, we do have an area to watch out for right here, this low. So just watch right now. This is early this morning. We didn't have much there across this whole system, but watch as it rapidly blows up across all of the quadrants. Watch right there. It just blows up a ton of convection, a ton of brightness, temperature glowing up for this low pressure and overall system. So we can kind of see it kind of very disorganized and lopsided, and then it kind of blows up. But watch the center right here. We do have a little bit of a center right there, and even inner core, which was a sign of the developing eye wall. So there was a sign last night to early this morning that there was development of an inner core leading to potential development or the beginning development of a eye wall, which is developing the Cuban Coast Ion, especially since it's now a hurricane and it has a well-developed core. So let's now go ahead and look at the latest 6Z tracks. And obviously this happened, this 6Z came out before the National Hurricane Center update. So 12Z for each model is going to be very, very interesting. Unfortunately, I can't post my video after 12Z because I will be very, very busy. So the only time I'm having this video is out now. So 6Z, every 6Z model, GFS, CMC, even H-Warp and H-Mon are completely behind on the system. So the tracks like this may be a little bit old. However, we can get an idea that there is going to be an eastern shift because of how strong the system is now. So it is going to pull to the northwest a lot sooner. So we may even see landfall for southeastern Cuba. I mean, how are we talking about southeastern Cuba already when we were just talking about Havana yesterday? So obviously, Cuba is very widespread. We kind of have all the way from the tip to the tip of southern Cuba. So it's kind of very unknown at this point, and it kind of matters because if it hits southern Cuba, it may hit Miami or the Bahamas. If it hits the tip of western Cuba, it's going to do like it showed yesterday and hit the Big Bend or even panhandle of Florida. But at this point there, we already know it's going to hit the Lesser Antilles and hit Barbados, which it already did. But now there's kind of a trend of it kind of sparing Jamaica. So Jamaica may get spared at this point. It did not look like that yesterday, but due to this rapid intensification, it has changed quite dramatically to the north. So we're now watching out for a lot of these tracks getting it just between Haiti and Jamaica. And if it does, this low pressure stuff does not touch Haiti or Jamaica, that will be a big threat for Cuba if it can continue to intensify or gain convection, leading to maybe even just overall getting more strength. That will be something to watch out for Cuba when it makes landfall. But a lot more models are taking this now into central and even south central Florida. So even the Keys have to be on a close eye. So I would not doubt if we see an eastern shift within the National Hurricane Center cone by the 11 a.m. update. I would not be shocked if we see an eastern shift because of this new trend. So now we have up to about I believe 3 or 4 models getting this making landfall for either Key West, Key Largo, southwestern Florida, which will bring in a lot more effects for the eastern Florida region, including Miami, Homestead, West Palm Beach, because, like I said, the northeastern and northern quadrants are by far the strongest part. So if it goes down here, that leaves those winds up for here. So obviously, there's a lot to watch out for. So if you're in Florida, whether you're in Tallahassee, Destin, Miami, Tampa Bay, Jacksonville, you guys need to watch out. I mean, almost the whole state of Florida has to watch out because of the uncertainty with the track. So same thing with applies if you're in Cuba. If you're in Cuba as well, you guys gotta really watch out because there's a ton of uncertainty for this as well. Same thing. I mean, every area like Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba, and Florida have to be on the lookout because uncertainty has changed. I believe 12Z is gonna be pretty different than this track. To be honest, I do think a lot more tracks will have it towards maybe Haiti and then Central Cuba like this. This could be a lot more common of a track by 6 or by 12Z, so it's just something to really watch out for. Like I said, models are behind, so look at this 6Z GFS wants to have it at 1,001 millibars for landfall in Barbados, but I mean, it's already at 995, so I'm just showing you guys the 6Z GFS so I can at least show you guys the latest model runs, but again, 12Z won't come out for a good additional hour or so. But here's a look at what the 12Z or 6Z GFS wants to have. It doesn't have it actually getting to 995 millibars till much later, around right here by Southern Hispaniola. So the fact that it's already 995 right here shows that this thing could be quite strong for the Caribbean. Not major hurricane, not category 2, but at least 80 to 85 miles an hour, considering the GFS wanted this to be sub 980 when it was only 1,001 at Lesser Antilles, and the fact that it's at 995 in the Lesser Antilles and may even be lower at the 11 a.m. update is definitely something to keep a close eye on because, I mean, let's say GFS or even H-Wharf Fairfield, even H-Wharf is completely behind on the system, so I'm just very intrigued to see what 12Z models want to show. And then, obviously, 6Z GFS is so trending towards a Jamaica landfall, and that's obviously because the GFS didn't pick up that rapid intensification. So I believe due to this rapid intensification, this cone is going to shift further to the north. So if you're in Haiti, I believe the 6Z's or the 12Z is probably going to look like this. If I'm being completely honest, something like this, and that's definitely pretty reasonable. That's definitely a pretty reasonable track if I'm being honest, or at least the mean of all those tracks for 6Z or for 12Z. And then I have a making landfall there for, of course, Western Cuba, which is expected because that was a trend yesterday. But now that it's completely different strength-wise, it's going to definitely be a completely different scenario. But GFS still wants to have it at 978 landfall for areas like Cider Bay or even areas near just overall the Big Bend of Florida, just to the east of Tallahassee. Let's go back and look at other models. We can look at the other models. Now, if you want to talk about behind, look at the 0Z CMC. If you want to talk about behind, they don't have it getting up to they only have it getting up to 1,007, 1,008. I mean this CMC is completely behind. I mean that's pretty bad if I'm being honest. Let's not go ahead and look at the actual winds though for the Caribbean. So obviously, like I did say, GFS winds will be completely behind. But for the next hour or 0 hours, they have it at 62 miles an hour. So obviously that's so strong in what the National Hurricane Center wanted, but not close to what we have now. But they actually have a landfall at 62 miles an hour for Barbados. Obviously, it doesn't show landfall yet because this was 6Z. When Barbados just got landfall like not too long ago. And then GFS wants to have it up to a 69 mile an hour tropical storm landfall for Lesser Antilles. So GFS isn't too far off considering how much different it was from the National Hurricane Center code previously. But it's definitely interesting because then GFS wants to get it to a 76 mile an hour hurricane. So if we're going off that, that's basically calling this around 80 miles an hour at this point because GFS is basically anywhere from 44 to 5 miles an hour behind. So considering that, it's basically so it's going to be 80 over there. Obviously, that's not how it works, but I'm just kind of making an analogy or how they're kind of considering just comparing the GFS to now. And then GFS will have to get some pretty good strength, and I do not blame it, between Cuba and Jamaica because of how the warm the ocean heat content is, and they want to get up to around 77 miles an hour, which obviously is definitely reasonable now at this point for a hurricane landfall for Cuba. We cannot rule it out, obviously in Category 1, not Category 2. And then obviously, look how the GFS is already so darn close to just really hammering Key West. So imagine what the 12Z will look like because of that eastern shift. I mean, it's already bringing in maybe 50 miles an hour sustained for Key West, which is definitely quite significant still, and then bringing in some really gusty winds for Tampa Bay. I mean, National Hurricane Center wants this completely making landfall right on Tampa Bay, which is definitely something very, very interesting. And then GFS kind of wants to get this to a category 2 and hammer the Big Bend of Florida, or at least they had it up to 91 miles an hour. Last but not least, I want to go ahead and show you guys the H Wharf. So like I just said, the H Wharf is definitely as well behind. Even the H Wharf, which is known for completely over forecasting storms. I mean, they showed up to like 950 millibars at some point for Elsa, which we definitely won't happen now, but look at that. The H Wharf itself only has 1,003 millibar landfall for Lesser Antilles. And this thing's already at 995 and hasn't made landfall yet. So this is definitely keeping it, I'm just keeping a very close eye, because even the NAM 2.0 isn't even showing that like that anymore. I mean, they don't have it getting up to 995 until basically south of Puerto Rico, which is still pretty far from where it is now. So I believe the storm's gonna definitely be quite surprising for a lot. However, I mean, the H4 does have it definitely getting pretty close to Haiti, because they have it up to 975 millibars. That's, I mean, if it gets to 975 at Haiti, I'm definitely going to just, I don't know what I'm going to do. So although it's 995 now, I don't see it being 975 there. But I mean, H-Wharf is going to be doing H-Wharf things at some point in this run, and it does get up to 972 for Cuba. But obviously, I don't think we're going to get 972. But the fact that H-Wharf is still behind on this, although this obviously came up before the rapid intensification, but the fact that the H-Wharf itself is behind is definitely something to keep a close eye on. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys later.